Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this video, we have my top 8 most fun builds on 1.15. There's a lot of awesome builds in this one. Definitely stay tuned. There's going to be something for everyone. And the first one we're going to start with is my Frost Battlemage. This is an awesome one that's going to use Carrion Sovereignty as our main weapon, Ash of War, and then we're going to use stuff like Glintstone, Ice Crag, and even Zamar Ice Storm you can throw in as a mage. If you saw there with Carrion Sovereignty, we're able to get almost 20,000 damage on the Fire Giant. It really does do a lot of damage. That Ash of War is quite good when you're able to pull it off, and then being able to switch back to a mage at any time is excellent. And of course, we're going to throw in Glintstone, Ice Crag. It is a little bit difficult to get Frost on the Fire Giant. He has very high resistances against it, but overall with this build, you're going to be able to get a decent amount of Frost procs and a lot of magic damage. And of course, the Fire Giant has 0 magic resistance, so we're able to go right through with our magic damage and get a lot in here, of course, with Carrion Sovereignty. Even in Phase 2, with the second swipe there, we took down the Fire Giant. But ultimately, this is a really versatile build that allows you to do a lot and take advantage of great damage. While having fun, too, of course, because being a mage and also running Milady with Carrion Sovereignty is going to be a good, versatile, and enjoyable build for you, so try this one out. Let's jump into equipment. And we have Cold Milady with Carrion Sovereignty. We have Lucette Staff, any seal for buffs. We're going to be using the Rakshasa set for the extra damage. Godfrey Icon, Magic Scorpion Charm. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman. We have the Shard of Alexander. We have the Magic Tier and Faith Tier too. And for our stats for this awesome build that does a lot of damage, we have 60 Vigor, 18 Mind, we have 20 Endurance, 12 Strength, 17 Dexterity, we have 70 Intelligence, and 33 Faith with the Faith tier. We're using Golden Vow, Howl Shabriri, Terra Magica, Glintstone Ice Crag, and Zamar Ice Storm. Leveling up, definitely more Mind, but you don't need that much for Carrion Sovereignty. Next up here, we have the Staff of the Great Beyond build. A lot of people have requested to build for this one. It's really cool to use this one. So we're using Glintstone Nails here, which is pretty cool. This is an interesting one because this staff can use both incantations and sorceries at the same time, which is absolutely awesome. So we can combine both. Now we're going to use Pest Thread Spears too. Now you can do your buffs with this staff. You can do any incantations, any sorceries. It's pretty, honestly, I love this. I think it's really cool, although the stat spread has to be spread around a little bit. We'll talk about that in a second. We're going to jump into equipment, everything you need to know. And we have the Staff of the Great Beyond, plus 10. We're using the Jellyfish Shield. You don't need a seal. I just had it slotted in for some reason. We have the Rakshasa set. We have the Godfrey Icon, Magic Scorpion Charm. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman, Phlox Canvas Talisman. And then for our tiers, we have the Magic tier and Faith tier. Let's jump right into stats. Alright, so for stats on this one, as I mentioned, it's going to be spread around a little bit. We only have 50 Vigor here, 23 Mind, 23 Endurance, and then 50 Intelligence and 50 Faith with the Faith tier. Then we're using Golden Vow, Howl Shabriri, Glintstone Nails, and Pest Thread Spears. We also have Multi-Layered Ring of Light and Zamar Ice Storm. Alright, the next one is a build that's built around Goku from the Dragon Ball series. This is a really fun one. Of course, we're going to be using Comet Azure as his Kamehameha, if that's how I say it correctly. I haven't watched Dragon Ball since I was like a kid, but it is a pretty awesome anime series. A lot of people asked for this one. We're going to show the other details to this build. Of course, there's going to be fighting options. Now, you have 2 options because Goku would use both kicking abilities and your regular fighting abilities as well. I went with the kicking dry leaf arts because I enjoy them more. Now, granted, Palm Blast is fitting and works really well, but for me, I really like the kicking abilities, and he does have a spinning kick from what I recall, so that really works with our Ash of War on the dry leaf whirlwind arts. Now, technically speaking, if you wanted to add to this build, you could do a Bloodhound Step Dagger in the offhand for your fast abilities, and then, of course, go for Lightning Affinity, which would be really cool with your fighting abilities. But for me, since we're already an Intelligence build, I went for Frost on the Dry Leaf Arts. Now, you can Google character creation. I didn't do too much with the character creation here. I kind of went for a basic look with a facial structure of 3. You can see the hair that I used, just black in general. I didn't really do anything crazy as far as the character goes because I couldn't find sliders that were exact from what I looked through. But if you want to look them up in your own time, you could probably find something that's pretty close. Yeah, I just didn't find too much. Of course, you can make the eyes like a little bit bigger and turn them into anime eyes, which is really fun to do in the character creation, and you can make it look that way. But as far as everything else goes, all the other stuff, I couldn't find anything that had that exactly down correct. And yeah, when I want to use other people's sliders, generally I want it to be really close. Couldn't find anything that was extremely close. feel like my character ended up looking more like Pinocchio from Liza P, but it is what it is. Ultimately, the build is what we're here about, and Comet Azure is going to be your main part of this build for any standing targets and for massive damage, and then we're going to have our amazing kicking ability for when we're up close with some frost damage too. Yeah, this is definitely one of the most fun ones to try on the list for sure, because it mixes in Comet Azure with frost and fighting abilities. It's kind of interesting to try to put this all together, and then be able to take a main boss on with a build like this is awesome too. Getting Comet Azure off can be difficult at times though, but even so, when you do, it does massive damage, and the kicking abilities are amazing. A lot of people requested this one, so I hope you like the concept here. This is what I came up with for Goku from the Dragon Ball series, and honestly, I think it's really fun. We are using Dane's Cold Footwork plus 25. We have Lucett's Staff plus 10 preferably. We have the Dry Leaf Seal, Confessor Boots, and Trampion Bracers. Then we have the Magic Scorpion Charm, Graven Mask Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman, and then we have the Cerulean Hidden Tier and the Magic Tier 2. Let's jump into stats for this one. Alright, let's check out what we have for Goku. We have 60 Vigor, 21 Mind, 22 Endurance. Probably need more Endurance on this build. If you're above 150, definitely more Endurance and more Mind. 12 Strength, 12 Dexterity. We have 60 Intelligence, 33 Faith. And then we're going to be using Golden Vow, Howlish Abiri, and then we have Comet Azure and Terra Magica, of course, to boost that damage by a lot and get massive damage out of Comet Azure. Alright, next up we have the Prayerful Strike Big Damage build. Now, you could do this one, I believe, with the Giant Crusher too. I don't do a lot of builds for Preylight's Inferno Crozier, though, so I wanted to add this one in. And honestly, it does massive damage because we're using such a big bonk weapon, and we can heal back HP, of course, using Prayerful Strike as well. Alright, and of course we're going to show off this one in the best way possible by getting in as many bonk hits as we can with Prayerful Strike. Keep in mind, you can trade a lot with this Ash of War, and we're going to be getting around 4,000 damage per use of it. And having a weapon like Preylight's Inferno Crozier giving us between 850 and 900 AR is pretty incredible, to be honest, and just getting in that constant massive damage and even going for some posture breaks too. This is one you really can't go wrong with, and you'll be able to use against a lot of the bosses in the game. And of course, a lot of damage there. I think all in all, if I was going to use if I was able to get another Prayerful Strike in there, it probably would have been like 4 or 5 of them in total against Commander Neil and New Game Plus here. Now, yeah, not bad at all. Pretty amazing with Preylight's Inferno Crozier. You could probably do this with the Giant Crusher too, a lot of different weapons. I also like it with the Great Stars, of course. It always combines well for that extra HP gain. Let's jump into equipment, stats, everything you need to know. Alright, and for this one, we are going to have Preylight's Inferno Crozier, plus 25 preferably with Prayerful Strike. We have the Erdtree Seal. We're using the Rakshasa set again here for the extra damage. We have the Sacred Scorpion Charm, Arsenal Charms plus 1 or Great Jar's Arsenal, Ritual Swords Talisman, Shard of Alexander, Holy Tier, and Faith Tier 2. And now for stats on this one, of course, we are a Strength and Faith build. We have 60 Vigor. We have 50 Strength. That's going to be 75 when we two-hand this. We have 50 Faith as well, 21 Mind, 28 Endurance, and we're using Golden Vow and Howlish Abiri for this build. And the next one on here is a Scattershot Dagger build. This is going to use the Smith Script Dagger, which is still, in my opinion, an underwhelming dagger, but it does go well with this Ash of War Scattershot Throw. So much like the Claws of Night, the interesting thing about Scattershot Throw is you really only need to hit with some of it to get the bleed build up, which is amazing. You don't even have to hit with all of it. Of course, if you hit with all of it, you'll get more damage, but the bleed build up is pretty much the same as long as you clip an enemy with it. You'll still get the bleed build up, which is absolutely awesome. Of course, you could throw the dagger too, but you're not going to get a lot of bleed build up with that or a lot of damage. Some of the throwing weapons, somebody mentioned this to me, a couple people mentioned this to me, because they don't cost FP, they cost endurance, the damage is lower, but the problem is the damage is just too low on a lot of them, and they're not too useful in most situations. Quick question, by the way, for the audience. Do you use any of the throwing abilities on the new weapons? Any of the Smith Script weapons? Do you use them? What do you use them for? And what Ashes of War do you like with them? So you can see the concept here is going to be using Scattershot Throw as much as you possibly can, because you're going to want the damage and bleed build up on that. You're not going to want to worry too much about having to use the dagger, because the damage and DPS is going to be a little bit underwhelming. However, Scattershot Throw does really great in terms of bleed build up, and of course it continues to build up even clipping the boss, which you can see right here. Same as the Claws of Night, really, which is hugely convenient. So keep that in mind when you're using it. You want to apply pressure from a distance. Keep it going because you're going to get that bleed build up no matter what. And if you can get close to the boss and hit with all of it, you'll get more physical damage as well, especially with a build like this one. Let's jump into equipment, stats, everything you need to know for this awesome Dagger build. An amazing thing to do with this weapon, especially since this weapon isn't that great on its own, and that's the Bloodsmith's Dagger with Scattershot Throw and Blood Affinity. We have the Dragon Communion Seal, Rakshasa Set, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Smithing Talisman, Ritual Swords Talisman. We have the Shard of Alexander. We have the Green Burst Crystal tier, Faith tier, and we're using Sleeping Pots there too. And for our stats for this build, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 20 Endurance, 12 Strength. We have 40 Dexterity, 45 Arcane. Hit that Arcane soft cap. Give us around 45 Bleed build up. Nothing crazy, but it's still decent. We have 25 Faith with the Faith tier. And then we're going to be using Golden Vow and Flame Grip Me Strength for this build. And next up here, we have an Occult Great Stars build. This is an awesome one. This is going to be built around charge attacks and Royal Knight's Resolve while getting in some good bleed build up too. This is one that's going to hit extremely hard. Yeah, I mentioned this in one of my other videos recently, but I'm really enjoying the Great Stars. There's so much you could do with this weapon. You have that little bit of extra HP gain, of course, but overall, it's just a really good weapon for jump attacks, for charge attacks, and for many different Ashes of War in Elden Ring. So if you haven't tried the Great Stars yet, I recommend trying it out. Use it with different Ashes of War, find something you like, and even try something like this where you're just going to be heavy hitting everything with charged attacks for massive damage, and of course a good amount of bleed build up too there you're going to get with the Great Stars as well in Occult Affinity. I would go with Occult over using Blood Affinity because Blood Affinity will give you more bleed buildup, but you get more physical damage with Occult, and the innate bleed will scale with your Arcane anyway. We have the Occult Great Stars plus 25 with Royal Knight's Resolve. We have the Dragon Communion Seal, part of the Rakshasa set on, and the Jar Helm. And then we have the Two-Handed Swords Talisman, Axe Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Ritual Swords Talisman, Spike Crack tier, Faith tier, and then of course we're using Moog Shackle to stun the boss as well. All right, let's go over stats real quick. We have 60 Vigor, 22 Mind, 28 Endurance, 22 Strength, 13 Dexterity, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, and we have 60 Arcane for a lot of damage with Occult Affinity. We're using Golden Vow and Flame Grip Me Strength. And next up here, we have a build for the Bonny Knife and the Butcher Knife in combination together as a Strength and Faith build. We have one in Sacred Affinity and one you can't change the affinity on. They have opposite scaling stats, so I switched the Butcher Knife to Sacred Affinity to go for a Strength and Faith build. Of course, this is built around using jump attacks, and we are going to use a lot of those with a build like this, and then the two-handed moveset as well. The Bonny Knife has the Ash of War that gives you a little bit more HP, and I think it'll give you a little bit more physical damage too with that Ash of War. Nothing that's increased by the Shard of Alexander, though. All right, let's take on the other Tree Sentinel here. We'll get in some jump attacks, of course, and you can see when you do the jump attacks, that's the animation for getting some HP back, which you will get with that Ash of War. It is really a decent Ash of War. It's nothing incredible, but it's fun to use for certain situations, and I don't think I've done a build for it yet, so it was cool doing a build for it. In a second here, we're going over equipment, stats, everything you need to know. The animation of sharpening the knife is really cool too. I think it's a cool looking Ash of War to go into battle with, and if you can dual wield these, that would be fun too. We have the Bonny Butchering Knife plus 10, and then we have the Sacred Butchering Knife plus 25. We had Prayerful Strike on it, Erdtree Seal. You can check out our armor set here. We have the Shard of Alexander. That's for the other one. Claw Talisman, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Strength tier, and Faith tier. Yeah, so the concept is if you need HP back or you need some good damage, you could switch to the other one and use Prayerful Strike for good damage if you have the Shard of Alexander equipped. Keep in mind it doesn't do anything for the Bonny Butchering Knife, though. We have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 28 Endurance. We have 50 Strength and 50 Faith. We have 20 Dexterity. For our buffs, we're going to be using Golden Vow and Halash Shabiri. This is definitely one to check out. All right, and the last one on this list is the Double Holy Axe build. This is a really fun one. So I had a whole bunch of Messmer Soldier Axe in my inventory, and I'm like, what can I do with all these? I want to do something with these axes. I don't do a lot of regular axe builds, and I decided to put Sacred Blade on 2 of Messmer Soldier's Axe. And honestly, this is one of the cooler looking builds that I've done. I didn't even use the Rakshasa set. I went for a cooler looking armor set using the Great Helm and part of the Solitude set and whatnot. And I felt like this was just one of those builds that looks really cool, does decent damage, and it's just an absolute blast to use. And Mesmer Soldier's Axe aren't bad either. They scale decently. You'll have close to probably around 700 AR each with Sacred Blade once you activate it, which is pretty cool. And then you can throw in incantations as well because we're a Faith build. You have the advantage of being a Faith build, which, as I've mentioned in many of my videos, gives you a ton of versatility. And by the way, I chose to fight a lot of the regular bosses because it was a change up from what I normally do. I haven't actually fought the regular bosses in a long time, so I decided to take those ones on for a bit of a change up. In my next video, though, I'll probably be back to the DLC bosses. I know there's still people looking out for spoilers and whatnot, but it has been out over 3 months now. Anyways, we're going to jump into equipment, stats, everything you need to know here. And of course, we have 2 of Mesmer Soldier's Sacred Axe, plus 25 preferably with Sacred Blade. We have the Erdtree Seal. We have part of the Solitude, Mesmer Soldier's Gauntlets, and Great Helmon. Shard of Alexander. We have the Claw Talisman. We have the Sacred Scorpion Charm. Arsenal Charms plus 1, or Great Char's Arsenal's better if you have it. Holy Tier, Faith Tier. Let's jump into stats. Alright, and for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 33 Endurance, 14 Strength, 14 Dexterity. We have 80 Faith with the Faith tier, giving you full versatility as a Faith build and a lot of damage from the Erdtree Seal. We have 85 Poise, which is pretty awesome. We're using Golden Vow, Hellish Brewery, Multi-Layered Ring of Light, and then we have the Black Blade Incantation too. And thanks for watching this one. Thanks for tuning in to these 8 awesome, fun, amazing builds that you could use to try in Elden Ring and hopefully have an absolute blast, absolute great time using these. I hope every time I make these builds you find something fun in them. Be sure to sub if you're not subbed to my channel yet. Quick note, I got ahead on a video or two for the upcoming week. It's probably going to be 1 video a week, but I have surgery this upcoming Friday on my right thumb. Had an issue with a nerve. If you want to check it out on my community tab for an update, I'll catch you in the next one.